coming tonight. For the ones that do not know, Science in Cocktails is an initiative that was created by the Niels Bohr Institute and the Theory in Practice 1 year ago. It has run for 6 months. It took a break and restarted 2 weeks ago. Right now, it's just an initiative organized by Niels Bohr Institute and by Bevidsthed. The aim of the initiative is to bring science closer to people in a relaxed environment, combining both education and entertainment for free. So tonight we have two very special guests. On the science side, we have Professor Stuart Hameroff. He's an active researcher and anesthesiologist. He's a professor emeritus for the departments of psychology and anesthesiology in the University of Arizona, and also the director for the Consciousness Studies, the Center for Consciousness Studies. His main contributions have been about biology of microtubules, consciousness, and anesthesiology. And he'll speak today about the problem of consciousness, his own theory about consciousness, together with his co-worker Roger Penrose, and maybe about Buddha as well, and LSD and all sorts of things, hopefully. And on the music, later on we'll have music, a solo performance by Andreas Benetsen. He's a double bass player. He has the highest degree in double bass from the Danish Royal Academy of Music. And he's a composer, arranger, and performer. So please, let's first applaud Stuart Hameroff. Thanks.
It's great to be back in Christiania. I was here years ago. I did my sabbatical in Copenhagen in 1986, so it's always fun to come back here. So I want to thank the people here and thank all the Danes for being so fun and interesting and warm to us. We've had a great time. So my title of the talk is Consciousness in the Universe, and these are like two mysteries. So someone criticized this as saying, the law of the minimization of mysteries. You put two mysteries together and maybe you have a solution. But let's look at this problem, because where did consciousness come from? What is consciousness? We'll address that in a little bit, and there are lots of opinions about that. But did consciousness emerge as a property of biological complexity during the course of evolution? This is actually what most people believe. And this is a brief history of the Earth. And at the top, life formed in very simple forms. And about here, spirochetes invaded prokaryotes, and that gave rise to animal cells, because the spirochetes brought microtubules and intelligent processes, and cells were able to move around and compartmentalize. But nothing much happened for a long time until a fairly brief period about 450 million years ago, only 10 million years, and all the animal phyla, starting with these simple urchins and worms, emerged in what's called the Cambrian evolutionary explosion. And that's one possibility where consciousness emerged. If you think it emerged in simple organisms, other people would say, animals and maybe even humans fairly recently. I actually think it was back here, but we'll come back to that. So that's the first possibility, that consciousness emerged during evolution as a product of biological evolution. The second is that consciousness has been in the universe all along as the ground of being, or God, or whatever, as suggested by various spiritual approaches, that we are immersed in consciousness. The extreme view is that consciousness is all there is. Consciousness creates everything, and we're all just manifestations of consciousness. The third possibility is that there's something that's in the universe and has been in the universe all along, which is a precursor of consciousness. It's not quite the same as consciousness, but if you do something to it, if something happens to it, that gives you consciousness. And the precursor would be something embedded in the universe at a very fundamental level, like spin, mass, or charge. It just is there and has always been there. And this is a view taken in the theory that I put together with Sir Roger Penrose, called the Orco-R theory, which I'll talk about. This guy with the sunglasses is just there to represent consciousness. And our theory is about quantum computing and these structures inside neurons, and which connects our brains to the most fundamental level of the universe, what the universe is made of. And people argue whether it's string theory, we're discussing that at dinner, or loop quantum gravity, or whatever it is, but the universe is made of something. So we'll get to that, but first let me say about consciousness that it's approached in many, many ways, and you also get different opinions of what it actually is. So we know when we open our eyes, the world appears inside our head, Bing. And Bing is meant to mean experience, qualia, a subjective feeling that distinguishes consciousness from non-conscious processes. You know, when we drive to work every day, or even ride a bike or walk, if you know the way, you're often mind-wandering about something else, and your autopilot or your inner zombie is driving the bike or the car or walking while you're somewhere else. But then your consciousness is somewhere else, then comes back. So most of what the brain does is non-conscious. Consciousness is something on top of that, which is meant here, represented here by Bing. So the neuroscientist looks at the brain with probes, and artificial intelligence people, artists, physicists, psychiatrists, Buddhists, and philosophers, all, if you go around this way, all approach consciousness in various ways. And I think all these approaches are valid. In ancient Greece, some Greeks observed that reality is actually all a representation in our head. We don't really know what's out there. All we know is what's in here. And what's out there could be something different than what appears in our head. For example, there might be something deeper out there. This was the story of Plato's cave, where the troglodytes could only see 2 dimensions, and for them, 2 dimensions was all that existed. And they were quite happy with that. But it suggests that there might be some kind of deeper reality, whatever it is. Now, Descartes picked up on this theme and said that reality is questionable. We may be a mere brain in a vat, fed information by an evil genius. So here's a brain in a vat thinking it's walking outside in the sun because it's being fed information by this computer. Now, The Matrix and other films have picked up on this theme, and it's still a recurring theme. We don't really know that our reality is accurate. And Descartes, of course, said the only thing of which he could be certain is that he was conscious. I think, therefore I am. For him, the observer was an immaterial soul which perceived the world. I don't know if you can, yeah, here's the soul here. It's the soul that has the Bing experience, according to Descartes, not Descartes himself. So he separated consciousness from biology, from the brain, and this, of course, is dualism, Cartesian dualism. Mind and matter are separate. Now, Aristotle had another idea that the body projected consciousness out onto the world. That he didn't know it was out there, but we projected qualia, subjectivity, out onto the world. And this is sort of idealism, that mind creates matter. In Eastern philosophy, consciousness pervades a deeper level of reality. And Bing is everywhere. Conscious experience is all around us, and we just are kind of waves on one big entity. This is sort of like panpsychism, where mind equals matter. Now, the second last category is neutral monism, and originally by Spinoza, James Russell, in which there's some underlying monism, one common thing that gives rise on the one hand to mind and on the other hand to matter. And I think this is probably the most accurate. And Hindus call it Brahman, people like me call it quantum space-time geometry, in which case it can give rise to both mind and matter. The final category, and the most popular if you took a poll among scientists and philosophers, is materialism or reductionism, where the brain equals mind equals computer, and matter generates mind. This would also say that consciousness emerged during evolution. They see the brain as a computer. On the left, we have all these neurons and synapses, and on the right, we have a computer switching matrix. And the idea is that synapses are like switches and gates in computers, and nerve firings are like bits, on-off states. This is also similar to what Descartes said in terms of organization of all these switches. that the contents of consciousness were like a play on the stage, and the contents of what was observed was on the stage, including actors, props, various things that led to the play, which is observed by an audience. Of course, who or what the audience in the head, in the brain is the problem. For him, it was the soul. But this idea was picked up in the 1970s by computer scientists and artificial intelligence experts who developed similar computer architectures based on kind of a Cartesian theater called the global workspace, a CPU or a global workspace with inputs and memory and data and top-down effects, and that consciousness was the output, as if it went to some monitor and somebody looked at it. But again, this avoided the question of who the audience was, or who the conscious observer was. It took consciousness out of the picture. Now, some neuroscientists in the 80s took this same picture and made the thalamocortical system the Cartesian theater, in which consciousness is based on sensory inputs, giving rise to being. However, this ignores internally generated states. A lot of what the brain does is mind-wandering, daydreaming. Maybe you're tuning me out and thinking of what happened yesterday or what you can do tomorrow, something like that. Mind-wandering, that would not depend on internally generated states, but what's inside of you. And as an anesthesiologist, I put my patients to sleep every day, and I'm going to try, and hopefully not going to do that tonight with you, if not yet. So there's a lot of things that going on in the brain that can be either conscious or non-conscious, as we see here. And if they're non-conscious, they're called the easy problems by Dave Chalmers, or zombie modes, or autopilot. The autopilot, imagine an airplane where the conscious pilot can press the autopilot button, go take a nap, or go to the bathroom, or flirt with the stewardess, or have a meal. The plane flies perfectly well as long as there's no turbulence. So, but consciousness also occurs in the brain. It kind of moves around the brain. So sometimes we're on autopilot and sometimes we're not. Now it moves around in a zone of what's called gamma synchrony EEG. This is a particular type of EEG at a particular frequency, 30 to 90 hertz, and when it's best correlated with consciousness, when this gamma synchrony occurs in large parts of the brain, there's a bing, there's a conscious moment. There was an interesting study a few years ago on Tibetan monks who were trained meditators selected by the Dalai Lama as the best meditators and sent to the University of Wisconsin to be studied. And they put EEG on them, and sure enough, they had gamma synchrony. The control was college kids over here who were trained to meditate for a day or two, and they had gamma synchrony also, but very, very low intensity and not very coherent. The monks had twice the frequency of gamma synchrony. So instead of 40 conscious moments per second, they had something like 80. And it could be that it seems that consciousness is a sequence of discrete events, almost quanta, normally 40 per second. And if you increase the rate, things get more intense and you have more conscious moments per time, and the perceived world seems to slow down because you're going at a faster rate. Great athletes say that when they're playing well, the outside world is in slow motion. So the monks have, just meditating, have very high frequency gamma synchrony. Now, Tibetan scholars tell us that the conscious moments are discrete moments that last a very short period of time, like the snap, 1/64th of the snap of a finger. Now, I'm not sure what that is, but various Buddhist texts have actually counted the number of conscious moments, and it comes out in the gamma synchrony range. So I think the Buddhists, the electrophysiologists, are talking about the same sort of thing. Also, Whitehead called these occasions of experience. So consciousness is a sequence of discrete events.